And what population is there today?
Oh, there's only roughly about 25 at present time.
Is that where the first sawmill was built?
The first sawmill was built right at Kinloch, just about 100 yards north of where the wharf is at present.
Would that be the first sawmill in Southland?
No. Oh, no, it's the first sawmill in the Wockdip district.
Do you remember anything about it?
No, it was just before my time. I remember a man losing his life there. He got slipped on the breaking down bench and was ripped right up with the circular saw. Heard my father talking about it. And they bandaged him up and put him in my father's rowing boat. And 4 men got in and rowed him to Queenstown, but he died just before he got to Queenstown.
Now, you were telling me a little earlier on about a boat called the Antrim. What
Yes.
can you tell me?
The paddle steamer, Antrim, was built by McBride and Co. for Lake Wockadip for conveying sawn timber and posts and firewood to Queenstown. In those days, the Queenstown people used to burn wood instead of coal, and the steamer, the Antrim, used to burn wood for the engines, for steam for the engines. And consequently, quite a lot of firewood went away. And I can remember when she used to have 30 cords of firewood on her.
But why would they build her at an out-of-the-way place like Kinloch?
Because it was handy to the sawmill. And being built with timber, that was the best place for her to build her because there's so much timber so handy. And she was built with hardwood red beech, Fagus fusca.
Can you give us any idea of the dimensions of her and the timbers used in her?
Roughly, I should think she was about 80 feet long, and she was about 14 feet beam. She might have been 16 feet beam anyway. She was very wide, and a very safe boat. She was built by Mr. Lucky. He was a shipwright, and a very practical man, and she was noted during her lifetime on Lake Wockadip. She was noted for her safety. She wasn't fast, but she was noted for her safety.
Was she originally built as a steamer, or did she sail under canvas?
She sailed under canvas for a short time until they could get the engines. And when they got the engines, she was sailed down to Kingston, and they put the engines in her. And after that, she was traveling under steam.
It must have been quite a contract to build a ship of those dimensions so far away from any conveniences.
Yes, it was. But in those days, they didn't seem to... difficulties didn't trouble them. Any difficulties that happened, they were there to overcome them. And they did it, and made a very good job of it.
Have they built any other ships on the lake since her time, or have these ships been built elsewhere?
The others have been built in Dunedin and brought up to Kingston in sections and reconstructed there.
I suppose even in your youth it was very isolated here. How far are you from the nearest point of what you might call civilization?
30 miles, that's Queenstown. And we are isolated very much. We have no road.
Oh, yes, it does get it here.
We have no road here.
Oh, I get you.
We'll have to start again on that. It must be still be very isolated here. How far are you from the nearest point that you could conveniently call civilization?
30 miles. That's Queenstown is 30 miles away from here, and we're not connected by any motor road, just by a track along the lakeside. We have for many years tried to get the government to put a road through, but they haven't done it yet, and we're always living under hopes that they will do it.
And how far are you at Kinloch from the next settlement, which would be, of course, Glenorchy? It isn't far in the boat, I know.
No, straight across, it's only about 2¼ miles across the lake. But if we have to go across on horseback, we may have to go 5 or 6 miles around. It depends upon the ford in the river.
And do you have to come over here for your mail or for a telegram or anything like that?
Not now, but years ago, before the advent of telephones to the places, if there's telegrams at Glenorchy, there'd be a flag put up notifying us that there's telegrams here. We'd either have to come across in a rowing boat. There are no launches in those days. And we'd have to either the rowing boat or come across on horseback. Sometimes the lake would be far too rough to venture out, so we'd have to come on horseback, and if the river was too high, then we'd have to wait until we could get across.
And do you have much difficulty now in maintaining supplies and things like that?
No, not now. We're getting the steamer at present 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And we can get our supplies any time during that time. After the Kinloch sawmill closed down, there was a sawmill erected 2 miles south down the lake, south of Kinloch. And there's so many bushmen with families there that in due time they got the Southland Education Board to start a school down at that mill. And that was opened on the 4th of October, 1884. And there are quite a fair number of children going. There'll be over 20 children attending the school. And the first teacher's name was Mr. W. Brown.
How far would the children have to come to the school?
They would have to walk 2 miles down from Kinloch, and there were two boys at Glenorchy, the Wilson boys. They went across in a rowing boat from Glenorchy to the sawmill at distances of about 2.5 miles.
And of course, a lot of the children would come from away out in the back in the bush, would they?
Yes, well, they're living along the lakeside, and from Kinloch right down. There was one family of 12 in one home, and most of those were going, the older ones.
And is the school still there?
Oh no, it was closed many years ago. It was closed about 6 years afterwards.
Now, about this telephone you speak of, how long is it that you've had the telephone in?
We've had our telephone in, and most of them on our side of the lake, since October 1924.
How was it put up? Was it put up by the government or by the settlers themselves?
Well, from Kinloch to Greenstone and Elfin Bay, they were put up by the settlers, known as a party line. We got it cheaper that way by putting it in ourselves. But the other places, the government has put them, the Post and Telegraph Department put them in. There's a telephone from Kinloch to Rootburn, and that was put in by the settlers on that part too.
And would they get their own poles out of the bush and erect them?
Yes, they had to get permit from the department to get the poles out of the bush, and they erected them themselves. The telephones, of course, were put in by the telephone boxes were put in by the linesmen.
And how do you get on if you need medical attention in these places?
Well, it doesn't pay to get sick up here because it's so very expensive. We have to get the doctor up by launch or plane. And then that expense plus the doctor's fees.
What does it cost you to get the doctor up by launch, just for the launch?
For the launch, at present, it's one party I think is charging £6, the other party charging £8 for the use of the launch, then plus the doctor's fee.
And do you have any amusements here? How often do you manage to go to a picture show? Or
We have picture shows. We have picture shows up here now every fortnight. We have to make our own amusements, such as dances. For years ago, we used to have concerts every now and again, and nigger minstrels and that sort of thing. But as the younger people come on, they don't seem to have taken an interest in forming their own concerts, so they have a dance sometimes once a fortnight or once in 3 weeks.
And how often do you make contact with the outer world? How often do you go out of the place?
Oh, well, most of the people up here only get away about once a year, or probably twice a year. If there's a show on or anything special, they might go twice a year, providing they don't have, like, if they're ill, of course, they have to go then any time. They have to go. But under ordinary circumstances, the farmers' wives get away about once a year, or seldom twice.
When at the time that your mother came here, living conditions must have been very grim then.
Oh, yes. And in those days, it was an open fire. And my mother used to bake bread with a camp oven, and beautiful bread it was too. It used to have known it was quite nice, even a week old. different from the present-day bread you get from the bakers. And then the colonial oven came in, and we thought we were up to date when they had the old colonial oven. And after we got the range and high pressure and all like that, it took my mother a while to get accustomed to it.
I suppose if you ran short of foods in the old days, it'd take you a fortnight to get them in, a week to get the order down by 1 week's boat, and another week for it to come up again.
Exactly, yes. Oh, yes. It was pretty hard times in those days, and we were taught to be economical. We always had plenty to eat, but we weren't allowed to throw our crusts away, and we had to eat what was given us.
I should imagine there would be many people who would think that there were still difficult times and that you were still living in the back blocks here today.
Oh, yes. Some of the people in town think that we're way out in the wilds altogether. Of course, we don't quite think that, although we realize we're very much isolated through lack of a motor road connecting us with Queenstown.
You must find the radio and the telephone a great help.
Greatly.
Great comfort.
Oh, it is, yes. Yes, in case of sickness, the telephone is very handy, and for entertainment at night, it's very nice. Personally, I prefer our homemade music, have the family to play their own instruments. That's what I prefer.